course, a big part of the 2008 storyline as we build towards WrestleMania is Ric Flair's retirement. And back in June of 2007, on an episode of Monday Night Raw, Ric Flair was drafted to SmackDown. And after a few months off, he comes back in November and declares that he's never going to retire, which actually might be true. And this prompts Vince McMahon to announce that the very next match Ric Flair loses, whatever that might be, would be his last. So at that point, every match that Ric Flair has is a quote unquote career threatening match. He would go on to beat Triple H, Umaga, William Regal, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. McMahon, and he's going to take on MVP here at the Rumble. We'll call it sort of the Ric Flair retirement tour. Is this something that you thought you could stretch out all the way to WrestleMania? Were you in favor of this storyline? And more importantly, how did Rick take it?
I think you could stretch it out for years if you wanted to. Memorable career. It wrestled everybody. So yes. There was everybody else left for him to wrestle. No matter who he did, it was always going to be stakes involved. And not, like steaks that you eat or anything like that. I enjoy steaks. But every match meant something. Every match meant something. You could have done it for 2. You could have done it for 5 years.
What did you think of, or what was your impression as to how Rick took this angle and storyline and how we got there?
I think it depends on what day of the week you would talk to Rick. Sometimes Rick would love it. Sometimes Rick would hate it. I don't think Rick was ready to retire.
Right.
In his head, but also at the same time, I think that he also thought that, man, what's left to do.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it does feel like, as a wrestling fan, kind of done it all at that point. Did you know that he was looking to wind it down, or is that more of a decision that you think was maybe made for him by WWE?
I think it was a combination of both. I think Rick kind of felt that it was time that he wanted to do some other things, but I don't think that he really wanted to wind down per se. And I think that decision was made for him to do it in the biggest way that you possibly could, in a huge stadium full of people that are, watching a classic match against a guy who emulated his career around Ric Flair.
Right. Well, that's what I wanted to ask is, I know when we talked about the good old days, way back in the 80s, you would sort of think about next year's WrestleMania and then work backwards. You've explained here on the show before. When you start this storyline with Rick, you already know it's going to finish with Shawn. That was already the target, if you will.
In a year, I don't know if it was a year or not.
Right.
It was a good while, yeah. And I think Shawn was the best choice for that. Is it Shawn or Triple H?
Let's talk about the WWE and Playboy. They had a relationship with Playboy magazine that I guess went all the way back to Sable in 1999. We know that Chyna would go on to pose in 2000, Tori Wilson in 2003, Sable and Tori in 2004, Christy Hemme in 2005, Candice Michelle in 2006, Ashley Mazzaro in 2007. How does that Playboy WWE relationship get kicked off? Because growing up in the golden era, back in say the Hogan Savage Miss Elizabeth days, that would have been hard to imagine an association with Playboy on the WWE side of things. How does that come to fruition?
I think it's the natural. You got beautiful women that are athletic women that are on television every week that are, definitely Playboy worthy, if not better than a lot of Playboy models. So I think it was a natural and probably, something that wouldn't happen because it was an era in which you were playing the families and it's tough. That's a fine road. But Playboy had also cleaned up its act. Okay. To where they try not to be as risque as, let's say, Hustler or
Right.
other magazines that were out there. They try to be a little more upscale. And it was just, in my opinion, it was a marriage that was waiting to happen, and a natural one.
Well, we know that the Sable and China issues, especially, just do gangbusters business. And it feels like there's almost an effort to keep this going as a once a year initiative. And the storyline we'll see in the Rumble is that Ashley, who was the previous year's model, gets a call from Hugh Hefner trying to recruit Maria for the 08 edition. Who would have handled conversations with the female talent like this? Like, hey, are you interested? That sort of thing.
God, I have no idea. Probably Stephanie McMahon or John Laurinaitis, one of the two. Maybe even Vince. I have no idea who handled those conversations.
This would have been one of the last times too that WWE and Playboy worked together here in 08. As the company is moving towards a more PG style of presentation, was the Playboy affiliation giving some heartburn to potential advertisers and things like that by 08, do you think?
I don't think so. I think that a lot of the advertisers that advertised in Playboy all of a sudden saw WWE is someplace that they could also advertise and move it to a more adult oriented advertiser and open up to those people. So there's a double-edged sword, but there's definitely a lot more to choose from. You got a bigger pool when you have a PG-13 product.
Let me ask you this. Do you believe, and I know you'd just be guessing probably because, or maybe you remember, but was this partnership, if you want to call it that, this arrangement between Playboy and WWE, was it terminated? Did it come to an end based on WWE or Playboy? I mean, had sales fallen off, or was the company saying, you know what, it doesn't fit the corporate profile we're looking for moving forward?
Yeah, everything falls off.
Right.
Everything, it ran its time. I don't know that there wasn't Playboy, distribution wasn't what it was.
That's right.
At the time, everything runs its course. There was no big blow up. There was no dispute or anything like that. It just was time.
It was time.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today. And hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. Adfreeshows.com.